The first round misses Lieutenant Commander Alexis Brennan's head by 3 inches. She feels it before she hears it. The pressure wave. The displacement of air molecules traveling faster than sound. Her brain processes the physics before her conscious mind registers the danger. By the time the crack reaches her ears, she's already moving. The rooftop gravel bites into her palms as she hits the deck. Sharp. Real. The kind of pain that confirms you're still alive. She rolls left, muscle memory overriding thought, putting distance between where she was and where she needs to be. The low concrete wall that separates her from a 6-story drop into the streets of Mosul suddenly looks like salvation. 2 seconds. That's how long the entire sequence takes. 2 seconds that feel like 2 hours. Sniper! Sniper northeast! Staff Sergeant Brennan Mitchell is screaming into his radio, his voice climbing an octave higher than it should for a soldier with 2 tours under his belt. He's pressed flat against the rooftop access door, eyes wide, scanning frantically for a target he can't see. Alexis has already seen him. The enemy sniper. 3rd floor window, 400 meters out, 11 o'clock from her current position. The morning sun catches the edge of a rifle barrel for just a fraction of a second, but that's all she needs. The light reflects off blued steel at an angle that tells her everything. Elevation, direction, approximate distance. Her mind catalogs the information automatically, the way some people recognize faces or remember phone numbers. She should call it in. Let the designated marksman handle it. That's protocol for a Navy SEAL on an Army advisory mission. Observe, advise, assist. 3 words that define the boundaries of her authority here. Don't take command. Don't show up the soldiers you're supposed to be helping. Don't make them look bad in front of their own people. But protocol doesn't account for the fact that their designated marksman, Specialist Dominic Fletcher, is currently frozen behind a ventilation unit with his hands shaking so badly his rifle is wobbling like a divining rod in a thunderstorm. Another round impacts the concrete wall, inches from Alexis's position. Chips of stone pepper her face, tiny stinging reminders that the enemy sniper is good, trained, patient, and he's got them pinned down on a rooftop with exactly 1 way off, a stairwell door that's currently in his direct line of fire. "We need to move," Mitchell shouts. His voice carries the edge of panic that comes when training collides with reality. "We're sitting ducks up here." He's not wrong. The mission was supposed to be simple. Reconnaissance. Get eyes on a suspected ISIS weapons cache. Take photos. Extract. In and out in 20 minutes. A milk run, they'd called it in the briefing. The kind of operation you could run in your sleep after 9 months in Mosul. But somebody knew they were coming. Somebody set a trap. And now 6 soldiers are trapped on a rooftop with a trained enemy sniper systematically working angles to kill them all. Alexis keys her radio, keeping her voice level. Calm. The way you talk to a spooked horse. "This is Romeo 7. We have effective enemy sniper fire. Request immediate ISR support for counter-sniper targeting." The response crackles back immediately. Too immediately. They were waiting for this call. "Romeo 7, this is TOC. All ISR assets are committed to Operation Crimson Hawk. Earliest availability is 4 to 5 minutes. Can you hold position?" 45 minutes. Alexis does the math in her head. The enemy sniper is firing approximately every 30 seconds. Disciplined, conserving ammunition. But he's adjusting, getting closer with each shot, learning their positions, reading their movements. In 45 minutes, at least half of them will be dead. "Negative, TOC. We need support now." "Romeo 7, there is no support available. You need to suppress that sniper and move to secondary extract point. How copy?" Alexis closes her eyes for a brief second. Just one. Long enough to feel the weight of what they're asking. Long enough to understand that nobody's coming to save them. Solid copy. She looks at Mitchell, who's staring at her with barely concealed panic. He's the team leader for this mission. Army infantry squad conducting security operations in a city that's supposed to be cleared, but clearly isn't. Alexis is just the Navy advisor, the SEAL they sent to observe and provide guidance on urban tactics. Except they didn't send just any SEAL, and Mitchell doesn't know that yet. 20 hours earlier, the sun had been setting over Forward Operating Base Dragon when Alexis stepped off the Chinook helicopter. The rotor wash kicked up dust devils that danced across the tarmac like small tornadoes, and she'd kept her eyes squinted against the grid, her sea bag slung over one shoulder. The base looked like every other FOB she'd seen in Iraq. HESCO barriers, concrete T-walls, the permanent smell of diesel fuel and burning trash. Soldiers moving with that particular gait that comes from wearing body armor for so long it becomes a second skin. She'd made her way to the armory first. Standard check-in procedure. Turn in travel weapon. Get issued local equipment. Master Sergeant Raymond Kowalski had been working the desk. 58 years old with 32 years of service etched into the lines of his face. The kind of lifer who knew every weapon in the inventory by serial number and could field strip an M4 blindfolded. He'd looked up from his paperwork with the expression of a man who'd seen 10,000 soldiers come and go and didn't expect to be surprised by number 10,001. Help you, ma'am? Lieutenant Commander Brennan, checking in for advisory duty. Need to draw my primary weapon. Kowalski had pulled up her file on the computer, squinting at the screen through reading glasses that sat crooked on his nose. Says here you're an instructor, Coronado. That's correct, Master Sergeant. He disappeared into the back of the armory, and Alexis had heard him moving things around. Metal on metal, the click of rifle actions being checked. When he came back, he was carrying an M4A1 carbine that had clearly seen better days. The barrel was worn, not dangerously so, but enough that Alexis could see the bluing had been rubbed away in spots from countless insertions into rifle cases. The stock was cracked along one edge, repaired with what looked like electrical tape. The optic, a standard ACOG, had scratches across the glass that caught the fluorescent light of the armory like spiderwebs. This is what we've got left for advisors, ma'am. Kowalski set the rifle on the counter between them. The good rifles go to the shooters, the guys actually running missions. You're just here to observe, right? Alexis picked up the rifle, checked the chamber, pulled the charging handle. The action was smooth, well-maintained despite the cosmetic damage. She examined the barrel, sighting down it toward the light. The rifling was worn, but functional. She checked the gas system, clean. The trigger, crisp break at about 5 pounds. This'll do fine, Master Sergeant. It's been through 4 rotations. Kowalski's tone suggested he was apologizing for something he couldn't control. Stocks cracked, optics scratched, but it shoots straight, mechanically sound. I can see that. Alexis signed the hand receipt without complaint. Appreciated. She'd seen the look on Kowalski's face, the slight confusion. He'd expected her to push back, to demand better equipment, to pull rank, maybe. Mention that she was a SEAL, that she deserved more than the scraps left over after real soldiers got their gear. But Alexis had learned a long time ago that demanding respect never worked as well as earning it. And besides, she knew something Kowalski didn't. The rifle doesn't matter as much as people think it does. 6 hours before the rooftop. 6 hours before the first round that would miss her head by 3 inches. The mission brief. Captain Garrett Blackwood stood at the front of the briefing room with a map of Mosul taped to the wall behind him. 42 years old, Army infantry, 9 months in this particular slice of Iraq, which made him the old hand, the guy who knew the city better than the locals. Gentlemen, he'd said, and then caught himself. And ma'am, mission is straightforward. We've got intelligence indicating a possible ISIS weapons cache at this location. He tapped the map. Grid November, Quebec, 774921. 3rd floor of an abandoned apartment building. We're going to establish an observation post on the adjacent rooftop, conduct visual reconnaissance, take photos for intelligence assessment, and extract. Time on target, 20 minutes max. Alexis had sat in the back of the room, her scratched M4 leaning against the wall beside her. She'd listened, observed, kept her mouth shut. Staff Sergeant Brennan Mitchell had been sitting to Blackwood's right. 29 years old, Scottish-Irish heritage visible in the red tint of his hair and the freckles across his forearms. 2 tours in Afghanistan before this deployment. He glanced back at Alexis twice during the brief, and both times his expression had been the same: skeptical, borderline dismissive. After Blackwood finished, Mitchell had leaned over and whispered something to Specialist Dominic Fletcher. Not quietly enough, Alexis had heard every word. "Great, babysitting duty," Fletcher had grinned. 23 years old, designated marksman for the squad. He'd been cleaning his M110 SAS during the brief, running a cloth over the Schmidt Inventorscope with the kind of care usually reserved for newborns or religious artifacts. Blackwood had noticed the whisper. "Something to add, Mitchell?" "No, sir. Just wondering what exactly a SEAL instructor from Coronado is going to teach us about Mosul that we don't already know." "No offense, ma'am." The last part had been directed at Alexis. She'd met Mitchell's eyes, held them, said nothing for a moment, let the silence stretch just long enough to make everyone in the room slightly uncomfortable. Then she'd smiled, small, professional. "None taken, Sergeant. I'm here to learn from you." She could have corrected him, could have mentioned that she wasn't just an instructor, that before her current assignment at Coronado, she'd spent 4 years with Naval Special Warfare Development Group, the unit most people called SEAL Team 6, that she'd logged 43 combat missions across 7 different countries, that her primary specialty was precision marksmanship at extended ranges. But she didn't, because Alexis Brennan had learned something important during 12 years in the Navy, something her father had taught her before he died when she was 16, something that had been reinforced through every evolution of SEAL training, every combat deployment, every moment when she'd been the only woman in the room. You don't tell people you're good, you show them. Blackwood had moved on with the brief: insertion route, radio frequencies, extraction contingencies, standard operation order stuff. Alexis had studied the map while he talked, really studied it. The building they were planning to use for their observation post, the approach routes, the streets surrounding the target area. She'd noticed things, small things. The windows facing their planned position had good sight lines for counter-surveillance. The streets were too quiet in the overhead imagery, too clean, like somebody had been maintaining them. The target building itself showed signs of recent activity, disturbed dust patterns around the entrance. She'd keyed on these details, filed them away. But she'd said nothing. Observation, advice, assistance, those were her job parameters. Not command, not operational planning. She was the advisor, and advisors who showed up infantry captains on their home turf didn't stay advisors for long. "Any questions?" Blackwood had asked at the end. "No, sir," Mitchell had answered for everyone. Blackwood had looked at Alexis. "Commander?" She'd paused, considered. "The target building, how recent is the intelligence?" 48 hours old. Drone footage from the day before yesterday. "Why?" "Just curious, sir. Wanted to understand the timeline." "It's solid intel. We've been running ops in this city for 9 months. We know what we're doing." Alexis had nodded. "Yes, sir." But she'd noticed the defensive edge in his voice, the unspoken message. "We don't need you second-guessing us. We've been here. You just arrived." Fair enough. The brief had broken up. Soldiers filtering out to prepare their gear, check their weapons, get whatever sleep they could before the pre-dawn insertion. Alexis had collected her M4 and headed for her assigned quarters. A plywood box with a cot and just enough room to stand up without hitting your head on the ceiling. She'd lain there in the dark, listening to the familiar sounds of a forward operating base at night. Generators humming, distant radio chatter, the occasional thump of outgoing artillery from another sector. And she'd thought about her father, Navy Chief Petty Officer Thomas Brennan, 22 years of service, died of a heart attack when Alexis was 16. She'd found him in his workshop behind their house in Virginia Beach, slumped over a rifle he'd been cleaning. The smell of Hoppy's No. 9 solvent, the weight of his hand when she'd checked for a pulse she knew she wouldn't find. He'd told her once, during one of their weekend shooting trips to the range, that being good at something wasn't enough. You had to be 3 times as good, because the world would judge you twice as harshly. You're going to face people who don't think you belong, he'd said, watching her put rounds through a target at 200 meters with his old Winchester. People who look for any excuse to say you're not good enough. So don't give them one. Be so good they can't ignore you. Be so good the only thing they can say is, damn. She'd carried those words through the Naval Academy, through SEAL training, through every mission where she'd been the first woman, the only woman, the woman who wasn't supposed to be there. And she'd learned that her father was right about one thing and wrong about another. He was right that she had to be better, 3 times better, 10 times better sometimes. But he was wrong about the part where being that good would make people accept you. Sometimes it just made them resent you more. Mitchell's words echoed in her head. What's she going to teach us that we don't already know? Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow we'll find out. The insertion had gone smooth. Too smooth, Alexis thought now, pressed against the rooftop gravel with rounds cracking overhead. They'd rolled out at 0530 in a pair of MRAPs, mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles. 14 tons of armor and attitude rumbling through the pre-dawn streets of Mosul. The city had been quiet, empty, the way cities get when the people who live there know something bad is about to happen. They dismounted 2 blocks from the target building, 6 soldiers plus Alexis. Blackwood had taken point. Mitchell had rear security. Fletcher had carried his M110 at the ready, scanning windows and rooftops through that pristine Schmidt Invendorscope. The building they'd chosen for their observation post was a 6-story apartment complex, abandoned, shot up during previous fighting. Concrete walls pockmarked with bullet holes and shrapnel scars. They'd cleared it floor by floor. Methodical, professional, by the book. The rooftop had offered a perfect view of the target building 400 meters to the northeast. Fletcher had set up his M110 on a low wall, bipod deployed, ready to provide precision fire support if needed. Blackwood had established their radio link with TOC. Mitchell had positioned the other riflemen at corners, creating a perimeter. Alexis had moved to the southeast corner, observing, advising silently through her presence and positioning. She'd studied the target building through her scratched ACOG optic. The windows, the doors, the roof. And that's when she'd seen it. Not something specific, just the absence of something. The target building was too clean, the windows too intact, the roof access door too undamaged for a structure that had supposedly been abandoned for months. "Sir," she'd said quietly to Blackwood, "recommend we abort. Something's not right." Blackwood had looked at her, then at his watch. "We've got a timeline, Commander. Intel says this cache is time-sensitive. If we scrub now, we lose the window." "I understand, sir, but the building doesn't match the intelligence profile. It's too maintained. Somebody's been here recently." Mitchell had overheard. "Ma'am, with respect, we've been running operations in this city for 9 months. This is what these buildings look like." Alexis had wanted to argue, wanted to explain that she'd run operations in 7 different countries and knew the difference between an abandoned building and a trap. But that would have been pulling rank. That would have been showing them up. That would have violated every principle of being an effective advisor. So she'd said nothing, just nodded, moved back to her position. 30 seconds later, the first round had cracked past her head. Now, pinned on this rooftop with an enemy sniper walking fire across their position, Alexis watches Blackwood's face. Watches the realization dawn that his 9 months of experience in Mosul didn't prepare him for this, that somebody knew they were coming, that they walked into an ambush. "Commander," his voice is tight, controlled, but she can hear the question underneath, the unspoken plea. "You're a SEAL. You've done this before. What do we do?" It's not a question about tactics. It's a question about survival, about trust, about whether this woman they dismissed as just an advisor, just an instructor, just someone who wouldn't see real combat, actually knows how to get them out of this. Alexis looks at Fletcher. The designated marksman is still frozen behind the ventilation unit. His M110, that beautiful precision rifle with its pristine optic, is lying on the gravel beside him. Useless. Because the person holding it can't function. She looks at Mitchell, the staff sergeant who'd whispered about babysitting duty. He's pressed against the access door, rifle up, scanning for a target he can't acquire. His training is good. His instincts are solid. But he doesn't have the shot. Nobody on this rooftop has the shot except Fletcher. And Fletcher is drowning in his own panic. The enemy sniper fires again. Another round impacts the wall. Closer. He's getting their range, learning their positions, being patient and professional, and very, very good at his job. 45 minutes until air support arrives. 45 minutes of this systematic destruction. They won't last 15. Alexis makes a decision. The kind of decision you can't take back. The kind that either saves everyone or kills them all. "Fletcher," she calls out. Her voice cuts through the chaos. Calm, commanding. "I need your rifle." The specialist looks at her. His face is pale, sweat running down his temples despite the cool morning air. "What?" "Your M110, I need it, now." "You're going to counter-snipe?" Mitchell's voice carries disbelief and something else. Something that might be hope. "Ma'am, that's a 400-meter shot against a concealed target with an elevated position advantage. That's an expert-level shot, even with optimal conditions." Alexis doesn't respond. She's already low-crawling toward Fletcher's position, moving smooth, controlled, keeping below the sight line of the enemy sniper. Another round cracks overhead, searching for them, and she times her movement between shots, reading the enemy's rhythm, understanding his tempo. She reaches Fletcher, puts a hand on his shoulder. The kid is shaking. Full-body tremors that have nothing to do with the temperature. "Hey," she keeps her voice gentle. "Look at me." Fletcher's eyes find hers, wide, terrified. The look of someone who thought they were ready for combat and just discovered they weren't. "You're okay," Alexis says. "You're going to be fine, but I need your weapon. Can you give it to me?" The specialist nods, shakily, passes over the M110. Alexis takes it, checks the chamber, confirms there's a round seated, examines the optic, and her heart sinks. The Schmidt and Bender scope that Fletcher had been cleaning so carefully during the mission brief. The high-end optic that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. It has a crack running through the objective lens. Not huge, not dramatic, but there. Spider webbing across the glass like frozen lightning. Fletcher must have slammed the rifle against the concrete when he dove for cover. The scope took the impact, probably saved the rifle itself from damage. But now the reticle is distorted, unusable. Trying to make a precision shot at 400 meters through that cracked glass would be like trying to thread a needle while wearing someone else's prescription glasses. "The scope's broken," she says quietly. Mitchell overhears. Of course he does. "Then we're done. We can't counter-snipe without a scope." Alexis's mind is racing. The M110 has backup iron sights, simple post and aperture sights that flip up when the scope is removed. They're designed for close-range emergency use, maybe out to 200 meters with a lot of luck in perfect conditions, not for precision shooting at 400 meters against a concealed target in a darkened window. But Lieutenant Commander Alexis Brennan didn't earn her place in naval special warfare by accepting limitations. She flips up the backup iron sights, removes the damaged scope entirely. The rifle suddenly looks naked, primitive, like bringing a musket to a gunfight. "You cannot be serious." Mitchell is staring at her now, really staring. "Ma'am, that's suicide. You won't even get close." "Maybe," Alexis admits. She's already evaluating shooting positions. The rooftop wall is too low for prone, too exposed for sitting. She needs something elevated, stable. She spots a partially destroyed ventilation box, about 3 feet high, perfect for a supported kneeling position. "But we don't have another option," she continues. "TOC says 45 minutes. The enemy sniper is firing every 30 seconds. Do the math, Sergeant. How many of us survive 45 minutes?" Mitchell does the math. His face tells her he gets the same answer she did. None of them. "Give me 2 minutes," Alexis says. "For what?" She's already moving to the ventilation box, setting up behind it, finding her position. "To remember something I used to know. 6 years ago, during a cold Montana morning that felt like it happened in another lifetime, Lieutenant Junior Grade Alexis Brennan had met a man who would change the way she understood her profession. Gunnery Sergeant Frank Morrison, 67 years old then, Marine Corps through and through, Gulf War veteran, Somalia veteran, a man who'd seen combat in deserts and cities and knew the difference between training and survival. The precision rifle course at Quantico had been optional. Most of the SEAL candidates were focused on the standard curriculum, checking boxes, meeting requirements. But Alexis had volunteered for every extra training opportunity she could find. Not because she needed to, because she wanted to be better than she needed to be. Morrison had been teaching the course, old school, the kind of instructor who didn't use PowerPoint presentations or modern training aids, just rifles and targets and the laws of physics that hadn't changed since bullets were invented. During one memorable session, he'd walked down the line of students and removed every scope from every rifle, just unscrewed them, took them away, left everyone with bare rifles and iron sights and expressions of confusion. "Technology fails," Morrison had growled. His voice sounded like gravel in a cement mixer. "Batteries die, glass breaks, electronics get wet, sand gets in the mechanisms. And when that happens, when all your fancy equipment stops working, you'd better know how to make the shot anyway." He'd set up targets at 500 meters, told them to engage. The students had looked at each other, at their rifles, at the distant targets that were barely visible to the naked eye, much less through primitive iron sights designed for close-range emergency use. "Ballistics doesn't care about your optics," Morrison had continued. "Physics is eternal. The bullet drops the same whether you can see through a $10,000 scope or a chunk of metal with a hole in it. Your job is to understand the science, to calculate the shot, to know the fundamentals so well that the equipment becomes irrelevant." Most of the students had struggled through that day, fired their allotted rounds, hit maybe one target in 10, went home frustrated. Alexis had stayed after class. She'd practiced until her shoulder was bruised from the rifle's recoil, until the sun set behind the mountains, and the range officer had to tell her it was time to go. Morrison had stayed with her, watching, occasionally correcting her form, teaching her to calculate holdover and windage in her head. "The front sight post," he'd explain, "becomes your reference point. At distance, it appears to cover a certain width of your target. You can use that to estimate holdover. 4 post widths high, half a post width left. It's not science. It's educated guesswork mixed with hard-earned skill." He'd taught her Kentucky windage, the art of aiming off target to compensate for wind and distance, the technique that American shooters had used for centuries before precision optics existed. "Trust your fundamentals more than your equipment," Morrison had said. "Equipment will fail you. Fundamentals never do." Alexis had asked him why he cared so much, why he was spending his evening teaching a junior officer something that wasn't on any training syllabus. Morrison had been quiet for a long moment. Then he'd told her about his son, Marine sniper, Fallujah, 2004. Top of his class in sniper school. Best equipment, best training, sent to Iraq with a rifle that could shoot the wings off a fly at 1,000 meters. His scope had taken shrapnel during an ambush. The glass shattered, the electronics died, and he hadn't known what to do. Hadn't trained with iron sights, hadn't learned the fundamentals that didn't require technology. He died trying to clear a malfunction instead of switching to backup sights and taking the shot that would have saved his life. I taught him everything, Morrison had said. His voice had been steady, but his eyes hadn't been. Everything except the most important thing, that the rifle is just a tool. The shooter is what matters. He'd looked at Alexis then, really looked at her. I won't make that mistake again. Now, pressed against a rooftop in Mosul, with an enemy sniper trying to kill her, and 5 soldiers depending on her to do the impossible, Alexis hears Morrison's voice as clearly as if he were standing beside her. The rifle is just a tool. The shooter is what matters. She settles the M110 against her shoulder. The ventilation box provides decent support. Not perfect, not ideal, but decent. She finds her natural point of aim, breathes, relaxes, lets the fundamentals take over. Through the iron sights, the target window is barely visible. 400 meters might as well be 4,000 with this setup. She can see the general area, the building, the floor, but the precision needed to thread around through a window and hit a target she can't clearly see is borderline impossible. Borderline, not completely. She closes her eyes, visualizes the shot. The 7.62 millimeter round will drop approximately 40 inches at 400 meters. Standard ballistics for the M118LR ammunition, loaded in the M110. The wind is blowing left to right at maybe 5 miles per hour. Call it 6 inches of drift, maybe 7 depending on exactly where in the 400 meters the crosswind is strongest. She needs to aim high and left. Use the front sight post to estimate the holdover. But there's another problem. She doesn't know exactly where in the room the enemy sniper is positioned. Shooting blindly into a window is just wasting ammunition. She needs him to move. Needs him to shift position. Needs him to expose himself for just a fraction of a second. Alexis keys her radio. Mitchell, I need you to create a distraction, something that draws his attention and makes him shift position. Mitchell's voice comes back immediately. Like what? Throw something toward the stairwell door. Make him think someone's trying to move. There's a pause. She can hear Mitchell breathing, thinking, understanding what she's asking. Ma'am, if you miss, he's going to know exactly where you are. He'll adjust fire. He'll kill you first, then work his way through the rest of us. I know. That's a hell of a risk. It's the only play we have, Sergeant. Another pause. Longer this time. Then Blackwood's voice cuts in. Commander, I'm putting 6 lives on this shot. Are you sure? Alexis doesn't answer immediately. She's settling into her shooting position, controlling her breathing, placing the front sight post on the target window, starting her calculations. The front sight post appears to be about 10 inches wide at this distance in her sight picture. She needs approximately 40 inches of holdover, that's 4 post widths, and 6 inches of windage, half a post width. It's not precise, it's not guaranteed. It's physics and mathematics and experience, all combined into a guess that either works or doesn't. Commander, Blackwood again, more urgent. I'm sure, sir. She can hear Morrison's voice, teaching her, guiding her through the fundamentals even though he's 6,000 miles away in Montana. The bullet drop at 400 meters for this round, with this rifle, at this temperature and altitude, is going to be right around 40 inches. You can calculate it exactly if you want, but in combat, you don't have time for exact. You have time for close enough. 4 post widths. Trust it. Wind is harder. Wind changes. Wind gusts. Wind doesn't give a damn about your calculations. But you can estimate. You can feel it on your face. Watch how it moves the dust on the rooftop. 5 miles per hour, maybe 6, coming from your 9 o'clock. That's going to push the round right, so you aim left, half a post width. And you trust that the fundamentals you've drilled 10,000 times don't suddenly stop working just because the stakes are higher. Alexis settles deeper into the position. The M110 feels different without the scope. Lighter, more basic. Like she's shooting with equipment from a different century, which in a way, she is. Iron sights haven't fundamentally changed in design since the 1800s. A post in the front, an aperture in the rear. Line them up, put them on target, press the trigger. Simple. Except nothing about this is simple. She's shooting at a target she can't clearly see, at a distance that's beyond the design range of the sight she's using. With wind, she can only estimate. At an enemy who's trained and patient and very good at his job. Her heart rate is coming down. 72 beats per minute, 68, 64. She's entering that state that Morrison called the shooter's trance, where the world narrows down to just you and the rifle and the target, and nothing else exists. "Ready when you are, Commander," Mitchell says quietly over the radio. Alexis takes one more breath, holds it at the natural respiratory pause. The moment between inhale and exhale, where your body is most stable, where the rifle doesn't move with the expansion and contraction of your lungs. She places the front sight post on the window, 4 post widths high, half a post width left. The sight picture isn't perfect. Can't be perfect with iron sights at this range, but it's as good as it's going to get. "Now," she whispers into the radio. Mitchell launches his helmet toward the stairwell door. It clatters across the gravel. Loud. Obvious. The kind of noise that makes you think someone's moving. Someone's trying to escape. The enemy sniper reacts instantly. Alexis sees it. Just for a fraction of a second. A shadow shifting in the window. A rifle barrel adjusting angle. The sniper moving to engage what he thinks is a target presenting itself. Her finger is already pressing the trigger. Not pulling, pressing. The way Morrison taught her. Like you're squeezing water from a sponge. Firm, but gradual. Let the shot surprise you. The M110 bucks against her shoulder. The recoil is sharp, immediate. She stays in the sight picture. Watches through the iron sights, waits. The 7.62 millimeter round exits the barrel at 2,580 feet per second. At 400 meters, it's traveling for roughly half a second, 0.46 seconds to be exact. But that half second feels like forever. Alexis watches the window, looks for any sign, movement, flash, confirmation. Nothing. No return fire. No movement, no indication whether she hit or missed. 5 seconds pass. The wind blows across the rooftop. Somewhere in the city, a dog barks. The morning sun climbs higher in the sky. 10 seconds. Mitchell's voice, tight with tension. "Did you hit him?" "Unknown," Alexis says. Her voice is calm, professional, but inside her mind is racing through probabilities. The shot felt good. The trigger press was clean. The sight picture was as good as it could be under the circumstances. But good and good enough aren't always the same thing. 15 seconds. "He's not shooting," Blackwood observes. There's hope in his voice, desperate hope. The kind that comes when you're pinned down and running out of options. "Professional snipers have patience," Alexis responds. "This could be a trick, waiting for us to expose ourselves." She's not wrong. She's seen it before. Enemy combatants playing dead, waiting for soldiers to break cover, then opening fire when they present themselves. It's a classic tactic, cruel, effective. 20 seconds. The silence stretches, gets heavy. Every soldier on that rooftop is thinking the same thing. Did she make the shot? Is the enemy sniper dead? Or is he sitting in that window right now, sighting in on whoever moves first? Alexis keys her radio. Professional. Calm. "Romeo 7 to TOC. Request drone confirmation on enemy sniper position. Grid November Quebec 774921. Third floor window. Need to verify threat status. The response takes a moment. Stand by, Romeo 7. The team stays frozen. Nobody moves. Nobody breathes harder than necessary. Fletcher is still behind his ventilation unit, but he's watching Alexis now instead of panicking. Mitchell has his rifle up, scanning, providing security. Blackwood is pressed against the access door, head on a swivel, checking their perimeter. 30 seconds since the shot. Romeo 7, we're redirecting a passing shadow drone to your location. Give us 2 minutes for repositioning. 2 minutes. 120 seconds. It doesn't sound like much, but when you're exposed on a rooftop with a possible enemy sniper still in play, 2 minutes feels like 2 hours. Alexis maintains her position, doesn't move, doesn't relax. The M110 is still at her shoulder, still aimed at that window. If the enemy sniper is alive and waiting, she needs to be ready to take a follow-up shot. Her mind drifts back to Montana, to Morrison, to that day when she'd stayed late practicing iron sight shooting until her shoulder was one giant bruise. "How do you know if you made the shot?" she'd asked him. "When you can't see the target clearly through these sights, how do you know?" Morrison had been quiet for a moment. Then he'd said something that stuck with her. "You don't, not always. Sometimes you take the shot and you have to wait for confirmation. But you trust your fundamentals. You trust that you did everything right. Breath control, trigger press, sight picture, holdover calculation. If you did all of those things correctly, the bullet goes where it's supposed to go. Physics doesn't lie. Mathematics doesn't have bad days. Trust the process. Trust the process. Alexis trusts it, has to trust it, because the alternative is accepting that she just fired around that mist, that alerted the enemy to her exact position, and that's going to get everyone on this rooftop killed. 60 seconds, still no movement from the window, still no return fire. "He's not shooting," Mitchell says again. His voice carries a different tone now, less hope, more analysis. "Ma'am, if he was alive, he would have engaged by now. You gave him a target. I threw my helmet. He should have fired." "Should have," Alexis agrees, "but we don't know until we know." 90 seconds. The radio crackles. "Romeo 7, this is Raven 26. We have your position. Adjusting shadow for thermal scan of target building. Stand by." More waiting. The sun is getting hotter. Alexis can feel sweat running down her back under her body armor. Her shoulder is starting to ache from holding the rifle in position. Her right eye, pressed against the rear sight aperture for so long, is watering slightly. She doesn't move. 110 seconds. "Romeo 7, Raven 26. We have thermal confirmation. Thermal signature in third floor window is stationary. Not moving. Appears to be, wait one." The pause feels like forever. Then, "Romeo 7, thermal signature is consistent with a casualty. Body temperature is dropping. No movement detected. Target is down. Repeat, target is down." The rooftop erupts in controlled chaos. Not celebration. Not yet. But relief. The kind of relief that comes when death stops actively hunting you. "Confirmed kill," Blackwood says into the radio. His voice is steady, but Alexis can hear the emotion underneath. "Romeo 7 acknowledging. Target neutralized." Mitchell is staring at Alexis. Just staring. His expression is complicated. Disbelief, respect, something that might be awe. "You made that shot," he says, "and it's not a question, it's an accusation. An accusation that she's been holding out on them, that she's more than she claimed to be, that everything they assumed about her was wrong." But before Alexis can respond, the radio crackles again. "Romeo 7, Raven 26. We're reviewing the footage. That was a hell of a shot. What kind of optic were you using?" Alexis keys the mic, keeps her voice professional. "Backup iron sights. Primary optic was damaged." There's a long pause on the other end, long enough that Alexis wonders if the connection dropped. Then, Romeo 7, say again your last? Did you say iron sights? Affirmative. Backup iron sights. Schmidt and Bender scope was cracked. Used flip-up iron sights. Another pause. Longer this time. She can imagine the drone operators looking at each other, trying to process what she just said. Romeo 7, we're showing a 400-meter shot. Through a window. With iron sights? Confirmed. Jesus Christ, someone mutters over the radio. Probably forgot their push-to-talk was keyed. That's not possible. But it is possible. Alexis just proved it. Morrison proved it could be done 6 years ago in Montana. His son proved it was necessary in Fallujah when his scope failed and he didn't have the fundamentals to fall back on. Difficult, not impossible. Alexis finally lowers the M110, safes it. Her shoulder throbs where the recoil pad was pressed for the last 2 minutes. Her eye is watering more now that she's not looking through the rear sight. Her hands are rock steady, but she knows in about 10 minutes they're going to start shaking. Adrenaline dump. Natural response after extreme stress. We need to relocate now, she says. Her voice cuts through the relief and disbelief. Brings everyone back to the mission. Where there's one sniper, there might be more. We need to move to secondary extract point. Double time. Blackwood nods, starts giving orders. The team moves with years of training overriding their shock. They clear the rooftop, make it down the stairwell, emerge into the street-level chaos of urban Mosul. 2 blocks to the secondary extract point. They move in tactical formation. Alexis taking rear security now, still carrying Fletcher's M110, still alert, still scanning for threats. Because the mission isn't over until you're back at base. And sometimes not even then. They make it to the extract point, a partially collapsed building that provides cover and concealment. No further contact, no additional snipers, just the heat and the dust, and the particular silence that comes after surviving something that should have killed you. The QRF vehicles arrive 12 minutes later. 2 MRAPs rolling hard through the streets. They load up. Weapons pointed outward, eyes scanning. Nobody talks. The ride back to FOB Dragon takes 20 minutes. Alexis sits in the back of the MRAP, the M110 across her lap. She can feel everyone looking at her. Not obviously, not staring, but those quick glances, the reassessment happening behind their eyes. Fletcher is the first to speak. His voice is quiet, ashamed. Ma'am, I froze up there. I'm supposed to be the marksman and I couldn't do my job. I'm sorry. Alexis looks at him, really looks at him. 23 years old, first real contact under sustained fire. Panic attack that rendered him combat ineffective. He's probably thinking his career is over, that he's failed, that everyone's going to know he froze when it mattered. Specialist, she says. Her voice is gentle, firm. You had a physiological response to extreme stress. It happens. It's happened to me. It's happened to everyone in this vehicle at some point. The difference between a good soldier and a bad one isn't whether you freeze. It's what you do after. Fletcher nods. Doesn't look convinced, but he's listening. We'll work on it, Alexis continues. There are techniques, breathing exercises, stress inoculation training. You're not the first designated marksman to lock up under fire, and you won't be the last. But you've got the fundamentals. I saw your rifle. You maintain it well. You know the technical aspects. We just need to build your mental resilience. Yes, ma'am. Mitchell is watching this exchange. His expression has changed from the man who whispered about babysitting duty in the mission brief. He's reassessing, recalculating everything he thought he knew. The MRAPs pull into FOB Dragon. The gates close behind them. Safe, relatively speaking. Nothing's truly safe in a combat zone, but this is as close as it gets. They dismount, start the process of clearing weapons, turning in ammunition, the mechanical rituals that mark the end of a mission. Blackwood approaches Alexis. Commander, we need to debrief with the S2. Battalion intelligence is going to want details on the engagement. Understood, sir. The debrief takes an hour. Alexis gives her report. Clinical. Precise. No embellishment. Just the facts. Enemy sniper position. Estimated range. Equipment malfunction. Shot placement. Confirmation of kill. The S2, a major with 3 deployments under his belt, listens without interrupting. Takes notes. When Alexis finishes, he looks up from his notepad. Commander Brennan, just to confirm, you made a 400-meter precision shot through a third-floor window using backup iron sights? Yes, sir, that's correct. The major looks at Blackwood. Captain, is this accurate? Yes, sir. I witnessed the entire engagement. Commander Brennan's account is accurate. The major sets down his pen, leans back in his chair. In 20 years of service, I've never heard of anyone making that shot under those conditions. That's exceptional marksmanship, Commander. Thank you, sir. Just did my job. Your job is to advise, not to conduct precision counter-sniper operations. My job is to keep American soldiers alive, sir, whatever that requires. The major studies her for a long moment, then nods. Fair enough. We'll forward this to higher. Might be a commendation in it. Definitely going in the intelligence summary. After the debrief, Alexis heads back to her quarters. Needs to clean Fletcher's M110. Return it to him, properly maintained. It's the least she can do. But before she gets there, she hears footsteps behind her. Ma'am! Commander! Wait! She turns. Mitchell is jogging to catch up. He's carrying something. A tablet. Secure network tablet used for accessing personnel files. I need to talk to you, he says. Alexis waits. Mitchell glances around, makes sure they're alone. I looked you up. In the personnel database. Did you? Your file is mostly redacted, classified, but what I could see, he holds up the tablet, shows her the screen, her service record, or at least the parts that aren't blacked out. You weren't an instructor at Coronado, I mean you are now, but before that you were assigned to Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Alexis says nothing, just waits. DEVGRU, Mitchell continues. SEAL Team 6, 4 years, 43 combat missions listed, 7 different countries, and your primary specialty, he reads from the screen, precision marksmanship. Extended range. He lowers the tablet, looks at her directly. You're not just a SEAL, you're Tier 1. You've been operating at the highest level of naval special warfare, and they sent you here to advise us. That's correct, Sergeant. The shot you made today, 400 meters with iron sights, that's not just skill, that's world-class marksmanship. And the rifle they issued you, he stops. Seems to be struggling with something. Master Sergeant Kowalski gave you the worst rifle in the inventory because he thought you were just an advisor. Just someone who wouldn't see real combat. The rifle did its job, Alexis says. You made a precision shot with borrowed equipment and damaged sights because you didn't need perfect gear. You didn't need the best rifle. You just needed fundamentals. Alexis can see where this is going. Can see the apology forming on Mitchell's face. Sergeant, she says, cutting him off before he can continue. You didn't know who I was. That's not your fault. It's not Kowalski's fault. It's not anyone's fault. I didn't tell you because it wasn't relevant to the mission. Wasn't relevant? Ma'am, you saved our lives today. I did my job, same as you did yours, same as Fletcher tried to do his. Mitchell shakes his head. It's more than that. I underestimated you. We all did. Made assumptions based on... He trails off. Based on the fact that I'm a woman, Alexis finishes for him. He doesn't deny it. Sergeant, I've been in the Navy for 12 years. I've been underestimated before. It comes with the territory. What matters isn't what people think about me. It's whether I can do the job when it counts. Today counted. Yes, ma'am, it did. They stand there for a moment. The conversation feels unfinished, but neither of them seems to know how to finish it. Finally, Mitchell speaks again. For what it's worth, ma'am, I was wrong about the babysitting comment. About thinking we didn't need you here. I'm sorry. Alexis nods, accepts the apology. Apology accepted, Sergeant. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to clean this rifle and get it back to Fletcher. She starts to walk away, but Mitchell calls after her. Ma'am, one more thing. She turns back. Would you be willing to teach us what you did today, the fundamentals you used, the calculations, how to shoot without relying on technology? Alexis considers this, considers what Morrison taught her, considers his son who died because he didn't have those fundamentals when his equipment failed. Yes, Sergeant, I'd be willing to teach you. That's why I'm here. The armory at Forward Operating Base Dragon smells like gun oil and metal and 30 years of weapons maintenance. Master Sergeant Raymond Kowalski is working late when Alexis and Mitchell walk through the door. He's bent over a disassembled M240 machine gun, cleaning each component with the kind of care that comes from spending more than half your life around firearms. He looks up when they enter. His eyes go immediately to the M110 in Alexis's hands, then to her face, then back to the rifle. Commander, he says, his voice is carefully neutral. That's Fletcher's weapon. It is, Master Sergeant. I'm returning it. Thought I should clean it first after using it in contact. Kowalski sets down the bolt carrier group he'd been wiping, stands up slowly. He's 58 years old, and his knees make small popping sounds when he straightens. 32 years of service. 32 years of lifting heavy equipment and standing on concrete floors and doing maintenance work that wrecks your joints. Heard what happened out there, he says. Heard you made one hell of a shot. Just did what needed doing. Mitchell clears his throat. Master Sergeant, show Commander Brennan what you issued her yesterday. Kowalski's expression shifts, just slightly, enough that Alexis can see he knows where this is going and doesn't particularly want to go there. Sergeant Mitchell, I don't think... Show her, Master Sergeant. Kowalski walks to the rifle rack, pulls out the M4A1 he'd issued to Alexis 24 hours ago, the one with the worn barrel and cracked stock and scratched optic. He sets it on the counter between them. The rifle looks worse in the fluorescent light of the armory than it did yesterday. The wear and tear is more obvious. The crack in the stock is held together with electrical tape that's starting to peel. The ACOG optic has scratches that catch the light like a topographic map of some alien landscape. This is what you gave her, Mitchell says. His voice isn't accusatory, not exactly, but there's an edge to it. You issued her the worst rifle in the inventory because you thought she was just an advisor, just someone who wouldn't see combat. Kowalski's jaw tightens. I didn't know. You didn't know she was DevGru, Mitchell interrupts. Didn't know she'd spent 4 years with SEAL Team 6. Didn't know she was one of the best marksmen in naval special warfare. So you gave her the rifle nobody else wanted. Alexis holds up a hand. Sergeant Mitchell, that's enough. Mitchell looks at her. Ma'am, he needs to understand. I said that's enough. Her voice is firm now, commanding. The voice that ended arguments in DevGru briefing rooms and on target ranges and in situations where people's lives depended on following orders without discussion. Mitchell steps back, nods. Yes, ma'am. Alexis turns to Kowalski. The old armorer is standing very straight now, defensive posture, expecting to get torn apart by a superior officer who has every right to be angry. But Alexis doesn't tear into him. Instead, she picks up the M4A1, examines it the same way she did yesterday, checks the chamber, pulls the charging handle, tests the trigger, looks down the barrel toward the light. Master Sergeant, she says quietly, you didn't know who I was because I didn't tell you. That's not your fault. You made a reasonable assumption based on the information you had. An advisor coming in for a short rotation, someone who'd primarily be in briefing rooms and observation posts. You gave me a rifle that works, that's mechanically sound, that will put rounds on target when the shooter does their job. She sets the rifle back down on the counter. This rifle did its job today. It did exactly what I needed it to do, and that's all that matters. Kowalski is staring at her, processing. Ma'am, with respect, that's a beat-to-hell rifle. You deserve better equipment, especially after what you did today. What I did today had nothing to do with the equipment, Master Sergeant. It had to do with training, with fundamentals, with understanding that the weapon is just a tool and the shooter is what actually matters. Alexis can see Mitchell watching this exchange, learning something, understanding something about leadership that doesn't get taught in any manual. Kowalski seems to struggle with what to say next. Finally, he walks to the back of the armory, disappears into the secure weapons room. Alexis can hear him moving cases around, opening locks, searching for something specific. He comes back carrying a hard case, sets it on the counter, opens it. Inside is a rifle that looks like it just came from the factory, an M110A1, the newest variant of the semi-automatic sniper system. Pristine condition, high-end Schmidt and Bender scope, every upgrade available. The kind of rifle that costs more than most people's cars. This just came in on yesterday's supply bird, Kowalski says. Supposed to go to the next designated marksman who rotates in. But Commander, after today, after what you did, this should be yours, for the rest of your deployment. Alexis looks at the rifle. It is beautiful. No other word for it. The kind of weapon that precision shooters dream about. Perfect fit and finish. Optic that costs more than the rifle itself. Everything tuned and adjusted and optimized for maximum accuracy. She reaches out, runs her hand along the barrel, feels the quality of the machining, lifts it from the case, brings it to her shoulder. The balance is perfect. The trigger breaks clean and crisp at exactly 4 pounds. The scope is crystal clear with no distortion. It is everything the M4A1 on the counter is not. Mitchell is watching her expectantly, waiting for her to accept it, to take what she's earned, what she deserves. But Alexis is thinking about Morrison, about his lesson in Montana, about his son who died because he relied too much on equipment and not enough on fundamentals. She sets the M110A1 back in its case. Master Sergeant, she says, I appreciate this, I really do, but I'll keep the M4 I have. The armory goes silent. Kowalski and Mitchell both stare at her like she just spoke in a language they don't understand. Ma'am? Kowalski's voice is confused. Why? Because it works, Alexis says simply. Because it's mechanically sound. Because I don't need the best rifle to do the best job. I just need one that functions. She picks up the old M4A1, the one with the worn barrel and cracked stock. This rifle did its job today. I'm not going to abandon it just because something shinier came along. And more importantly, Master Sergeant, I need to remember something every time I pick up my weapon. What's that, ma'am? That the weapon doesn't win fights. Training does. Discipline does. Understanding your craft does. If I carry that rifle, that beautiful rifle with all its upgrades and perfect optics, I might start to forget that. I might start to think the equipment is what makes the difference. Alexis meets Kowalski's eyes, holds them. But if I carry this rifle, the one that everyone else rejected, the one that looks like it's been through hell, I remember every single day that I'm the weapon. Not the rifle. Me. My skills. My training. My fundamentals. She slings the M4A1 over her shoulder. Besides, she adds with a small smile, this rifle and I have been through combat together now. We've got history. I don't abandon my teammates just because they've got some scars. Kowalski stands there for a long moment. Then he slowly nods. It's the kind of nod that carries respect. Real respect. Not the kind you give someone because of their rank. The kind you give someone because they've taught you something important. Understood, ma'am, he says quietly. But if you change your mind, that M110A1 is yours. I'll hold it for you. Thank you, Master Sergeant. I won't change my mind, but I appreciate the offer. As they leave the armory, Mitchell walks beside her in silence for half a block. Then he speaks. That was a test, wasn't it? The rifle. Alexis glances at him. What do you mean? You could have taken the new rifle, could have justified it. You'd earned it. Nobody would have questioned it. But you refused because you were teaching something. Was I? Mitchell nods. Yeah, you were teaching that leadership isn't about having the best equipment or the most impressive gear. It's about making do with what you have and being so good that the equipment becomes irrelevant. Alexis doesn't confirm or deny, just keeps walking. That's why you didn't tell us you were DevGru, Mitchell continues. Not because you were hiding it, because you wanted us to judge you by your actions, not your credentials. You wanted us to see that competence speaks louder than resume. You're thinking about this too hard, Sergeant. Am I? Or am I finally starting to understand what real leadership looks like? They reach the area where the containerized housing units are lined up in neat rows. Temporary homes for temporary deployments. Alexis stops outside hers. Sergeant Mitchell, you want to learn what I know? About shooting fundamentals? About making shots when equipment fails? Yes, ma'am, the whole team does. Then we start tomorrow, 0600 at the range. Bring your rifles, all of them, and tell the team to bring their egos, because I'm going to strip away everything they think they know and rebuild it from the ground up. Mitchell grins. Yes, ma'am, they're going to love that. They're going to hate it, but they'll be better for it. That night, alone in her quarters, Alexis sits on her cot with her phone in her hands. It's late, too late to call, but she calls anyway. The phone rings 4 times. She's about to hang up when a gravel, rough voice answers. This had better be important. It's 0300 here. Hi, Gunny. It's Alexis. There's a pause. Then the voice softens. Just slightly. Brennan, you okay? You don't call at 0300 unless something's wrong. I'm okay, Gunny. I used your lesson today. Which lesson? I taught you a lot of things. Iron sights at 400 meters. The pause is longer this time. When Morrison speaks again, his voice has changed. Gone is the gruff Marine instructor. In its place is something more human, more vulnerable. Did you make the shot? Yes, Gunny, I made the shot. She hears him exhale, long and slow, like he's been holding his breath for years and finally let it out. Tell me, he says. So Alexis tells him about the ambush, about the enemy sniper, about Fletcher freezing and the scope breaking and the choice she had to make, about calculating holdover with iron sights and trusting fundamentals and making a shot that everyone said was impossible. Morrison listens without interrupting. When she finishes, there's silence on the line. She can hear him breathing, can almost see him in his house in Montana, sitting in his workshop surrounded by rifles and targets and memories. My son, he says finally. His voice is rough, emotional in a way Alexis has only heard once before. My son David, he was a good Marine, good sniper, but I taught him to rely on his equipment, taught him that the technology made him better. When his scope failed in Fallujah, when the glass shattered and the electronics died, he didn't know what to do. Alexis has heard this story before, but she lets him tell it again, because sometimes you need to tell the story, need to speak the grief out loud. He tried to fix the scope instead of switching to iron sights, spent precious seconds trying to solve a technical problem when he should have been solving a tactical one. The insurgent he was supposed to suppress killed 3 Marines before someone else took him out. Then that insurgent's partner killed David. Morrison's voice breaks slightly. 73 years old now, Gulf War veteran, Somalia veteran, a man who'd seen more combat than most people can imagine. And he's crying over a phone line about a son who died 2 decades ago. I taught him wrong, Morrison continues. Taught him that technology was the answer, that the best equipment made you the best shooter. I failed him, Alexis. I failed my son. Gunny, you didn't. I did, but then you came along. Stayed after class that day, wanted to learn iron sights when everyone else thought it was a waste of time. And I thought maybe I could get it right the second time. Teach someone the right lesson, the one David never learned. Alexis feels tears in her own eyes now. You did get it right, Gunny. You taught me that fundamentals matter more than equipment, that the shooter is the weapon, not the rifle. You taught me to trust physics and mathematics in training over technology. And today, that lesson saved 6 lives. 6 lives, Morrison repeats, because you remembered what an old Marine taught you in Montana. Because you taught it right. Because you made sure I understood not just the how, but the why. There's another long silence. Alexis can hear Morrison composing himself, getting his emotions under control the way Marines are trained to do. You make me proud, kid, he says finally. David would have liked you, would have respected the hell out of what you did today. I wish I could have met him, Gunny. Yeah, me too. But in a way, maybe you did. Maybe you learned the lessons he should have learned. Maybe you carried forward what he couldn't. They talk for another 20 minutes about the mission, about the team, about how Alexis plans to teach them the fundamentals Morrison taught her. When they finally say goodbye, Alexis feels lighter, like she's honored something important. Like Morrison's son's death wasn't completely in vain if it led to lessons that saved lives today. She lies back on her cot, stares at the plywood ceiling of her containerized housing unit, thinks about her father, about Morrison, about all the people who taught her who she is and what she's capable of. Her phone buzzes, an encrypted email. She opens it. From Naval Special Warfare Command to Lieutenant Commander Alexis Brennan. Subject, early rotation/operational requirement. Commander Brennan, based on outstanding performance during recent enemy contact situation and confirmed combat effectiveness, we are recommending your early rotation back to DevGru for upcoming operation. Your unique skill set is required for time-sensitive tasking. Current advisory assignment can be fulfilled by replacement personnel. Request response within 48 hours regarding interest and availability. Alexis reads the email 3 times, feels the pull, the temptation. DEVGRU is where she made her reputation, where she proved herself against the best operators in the world, where every mission mattered and every target was high value, and every moment was intensity and purpose. But she also remembers why she left. 4 years of constant deployments, 4 years of being away more than she was home, 4 years of living on adrenaline and caffeine, and the particular kind of stress that comes from operating at the tip of the spear. 4 years of proving herself over and over and over because she was the first woman and the only woman and the woman who wasn't supposed to be there. She'd burned out, not physically, not even tactically, but spiritually, emotionally. She'd needed to step back, to breathe, to remember why she joined the Navy in the first place, to serve, to protect, to make a difference. And today, on a rooftop in Mosul, she'd made a difference. Saved 6 lives with fundamentals instead of high-tech equipment, taught a lesson about what really matters in combat. Tomorrow, she's going to teach that lesson to Mitchell and Fletcher and the rest of the team. Going to pass on what Morrison taught her. Going to make sure that the next time equipment fails, or conditions are impossible, or everything goes wrong, these soldiers will have the fundamentals to survive. That's serving. That's making a difference. Maybe a different kind of difference than high-value target raids in the middle of the night, but no less important. Alexis opens a new email, types her response. Thank you for the opportunity. After careful consideration, I respectfully decline early rotation. Current assignment teaching fundamental combat skills to forward deployed personnel is where I can be most effective. Recommend I complete full advisory tour. Request consideration for extension if needed. She hesitates before hitting send. Part of her wants to delete it, to accept the recall, to go back to the intensity and the purpose and the feeling of being at the absolute peak of her profession. But she thinks about Fletcher, about his panic attack on the rooftop, about how he'll need someone patient and understanding to help him rebuild his confidence, about how he's got the technical skills but needs the mental resilience that comes from proper training and mentorship. She thinks about Mitchell, about how he's learning what real leadership looks like, about how he could be an exceptional NCO if someone teaches him the right lessons instead of the expedient ones. She thinks about Blackwood and his team, about how they've been operating in Mosul for 9 months with adequate skills, but not excellent ones. About how the difference between adequate and excellent is the difference between surviving and thriving. She thinks about Morrison, about his son, about the lesson that wasn't learned in time and the lives it cost. Alexis hits send. The next morning at 0600, she's at the range with Mitchell, Fletcher, Blackwood, and 3 other soldiers from the team. They're all carrying their rifles, all looking uncertain about what this training is going to entail. Alexis walks down the line, looks at each rifle, each soldier. "Gentlemen," she says, "today we're going to learn something that might save your lives. Not might, will. Because technology fails, equipment breaks, perfect conditions don't exist in combat. And when everything goes wrong, fundamentals are the only thing that will keep you alive." She reaches Fletcher, takes his M110, the one with the brand new scope that replaced the cracked one from yesterday. "Specialist Fletcher, do you trust this scope?" "Yes, ma'am, it's brand new. Just installed it last night." "Good, because I'm about to take it off your rifle." Fletcher's eyes go wide. "Ma'am?" Alexis removes the scope, sets it carefully aside, flips up the backup iron sights. "Today, all of you are shooting with iron sights only. No optics, no technology, just you and the rifle in the fundamentals of marksmanship." She moves down the line, removes every scope, every ACOG, every red dot sight. The soldiers watch with expressions ranging from confusion to concern to outright dismay. "But ma'am," one of them protests, "we're trained on optics. The Army issues optics for a reason." "You're absolutely right," Alexis agrees. "Optics make shooting easier, faster, more precise under ideal conditions. But what happens when conditions aren't ideal? What happens when your optic gets damaged, or your batteries die, or you take a piece of shrapnel that shatters your glass?" She holds up her M4A1, the old one, the rejected one. "Yesterday I made a 400-meter precision shot through a window with iron sights because the scope on the rifle I was using was broken. Not because I'm special, not because I'm superhuman, because someone taught me fundamentals that don't require technology." Alexis sets up a target at 200 meters. Not 400, not even 300, just 200. A distance that should be achievable with iron sights and proper technique. "We're going to start simple," she says. 200 meters, standing position, iron sights. I want each of you to take 5 shots. Don't worry about grouping yet, just worry about hitting the target." The soldiers line up, start shooting. The results are predictable, wild, scattered. Most rounds don't even hit the target. The few that do are spread across the entire surface with no consistency. Fletcher takes his turn. His first 3 rounds miss completely. His 4th clips the edge of the target. His 5th misses again. He lowers the rifle, frustrated. "I can't do it," he says. "I can't see the target clearly enough through these sights." "You're not supposed to see it clearly," Alexis tells him. "That's the point. With optics, you're looking at a magnified image. Everything is clear and precise. But iron sights require you to understand something more fundamental. You're not looking at the target. You're creating a sight picture that represents where the bullet will go based on physics and geometry." She takes his rifle, settles into a standing position, demonstrates. "Watch the relationship between the front sight post and the rear aperture. They align. The target sits on top of the front post. You're not looking at the target with perfect clarity. You're looking at a system of alignment that directs the bullet based on the laws of ballistics." She fires once. The round hits center mass on the target. "The target didn't become clearer. I didn't suddenly develop supervision. I just understood the relationship between sight alignment, sight picture, and bullet trajectory. For the next 2 hours, Alexis breaks down every element of shooting with iron sights: breath control, trigger press, natural point of aim, holdover for distance, Kentucky windage for crosswinds. She teaches them to calculate in their heads instead of relying on ballistic computers, to use the front sight post as a measuring tool, to trust mathematics and physics over what their eyes tell them. Mitchell catches on quickly. He's got the discipline and the focus. Within an hour, he's consistently hitting center mass at 200 meters. Fletcher struggles more. His panic attack from yesterday is still affecting him. Every time he gets behind the rifle, Alexis can see his hands starting to shake, his breathing getting irregular. She takes him aside, speaks quietly so the others can't hear. "Specialist, what happened yesterday is affecting your shooting today." "I know, ma'am. I'm trying to push through it." "Don't push through it, acknowledge it. Your body experienced a traumatic stress response. That's not weakness, that's biology. Your sympathetic nervous system went into overdrive. Fight or flight. It's still elevated today because your brain is associating shooting with that trauma." Fletcher nods, looks miserable. "Here's what we're going to do," Alexis continues. "We're going to rebuild your relationship with your rifle, not by ignoring what happened, by integrating it into your understanding and moving forward." She hands him his M110. "Take a deep breath. Hold it for 4 seconds. Release it for 4 seconds. We're going to regulate your nervous system before we regulate your trigger press." They spend 20 minutes just on breathing, on bringing Fletcher's heart rate down, on teaching him to recognize the physical signs of stress and counter them with technique instead of willpower. Slowly, his hands steady, his breathing evens out. "Now," Alexis says, "we're going to take one shot, just one. Not worried about where it hits, just worried about the process. Breath, sight picture, trigger press. Everything else is irrelevant." Fletcher settles into position. She can see him working through the breathing technique, creating his sight picture. His finger moves to the trigger. The shot breaks clean, hits low and left on the target. Not center mass, but on the target. "Good," Alexis says. "Again." They work through it, shot by shot, building Fletcher's confidence back up through repetition and success, and the understanding that his panic attack doesn't define him. By the end of the session, he's hitting center mass 3 out of 5 shots. Not perfect, but functional, better than he was this morning. The team gathers around as Alexis prepares to demonstrate the 400-meter shot, the one they've all heard about but haven't seen. She sets up a silhouette target at 400 meters. It's barely visible to the naked eye, a dark shape against the berm. Through iron sights, it's little more than a blur. "This is what I shot yesterday," she tells them, "except yesterday it was through a window with an enemy sniper who was actively trying to kill me. Today it's a stationary target in perfect conditions. Should be easier." She settles into a supported, prone position, calculates the holdover in her head. The M4A1 shoots a different round than the M110 she used yesterday. Lighter bullet, different ballistics. She adjusts her calculations accordingly. The wind is calm, maybe 3 miles per hour. She can feel it on her face, read it in the dust patterns on the range. Negligible drift at this distance with this round. She places the front sight post on the target, or rather, on where the target should be. Because through iron sights at 400 meters, she can't actually see the silhouette clearly, just knows it's there based on memory and geometry. 4 post widths high. The calculation runs through her mind automatically, becomes muscle memory, becomes something she doesn't think about so much as feels. Her finger finds the trigger, presses. The rifle fires. 400 meters away, the silhouette target rocks back. Center mass hit. The soldiers stare. Even Mitchell, who's been learning all morning, looks impressed. "Ma'am," one of them says, "how do you even see the target at that distance through iron sights?" "I don't," Alexis admits. "Not clearly, but I don't need to see it clearly. I need to understand where it is. Trust the ballistics of my ammunition. Understand the holdover required. Trust that if I do everything right, physics will put the bullet where it needs to go. She stands up, safes her rifle. That's what fundamentals are. They're the understanding that shooting isn't about seeing clearly or having perfect equipment. It's about trusting science and mathematics and your training more than your eyes. Over the next 7 days, the transformation is gradual but unmistakable. Day 2 brings frustration. The soldiers stand at the 200-meter line, their rifles stripped of optics, and the targets might as well be on the moon. Rounds scatter across the berm. One soldier, Private First Class James Rutherford, throws his rifle down in disgust after his 10th consecutive miss. "This is bullshit, ma'am," he says, then catches himself. "Sorry, but I can't hit anything with these sights." Alexis doesn't react to the outburst. She's seen this before. The anger that comes when competence is stripped away and you're forced to rebuild from basics. "Pick up your rifle, Private," she says calmly, "and tell me what you're doing wrong." "I can't see the target clearly enough." That's your first mistake. You're trying to see the target the way you do with optics. Iron sights don't work that way. You're not looking at the target. You're creating a relationship between 3 points: your eye, the rear aperture, and the front sight post. The target is just context. She takes his rifle, shows him again, the same demonstration she's given 20 times already. But this time, something clicks. Rutherford watches her sight picture, sees how she's not focused on the distant target, but on the alignment of the sights themselves. His next shot hits the target, low and right, but on the target. "Again," Alexis says. By day 4, Mitchell is hitting center mass at 300 meters with iron sights. He's absorbed the fundamentals faster than anyone else on the team. During a water break, he approaches Alexis with a question. "Ma'am, the holdover calculations, you're doing them in your head, but there's got to be a faster way, a shortcut." "There is," Alexis confirms. "Muscle memory. Right now you're consciously thinking through each step. Bullet drop at 300 meters. Wind drift. Holdover and post widths. Eventually your brain compresses all of that into intuition. You look at the target, feel the wind, and your hands just know where to aim. How long does that take? Depends on the person. For you, maybe 1,000 rounds, maybe 5,000. But every round you fire with iron sights is building that neural pathway, making the calculation faster, more automatic." Mitchell nods, then asks the real question. "Ma'am, why didn't they teach us this in basic? In infantry school, we spent weeks on optics, hours on red dot sights, but nobody ever said, here's what you do when all that fails." "Because modern military doctrine assumes technology won't fail," Alexis explains. "We've got redundant systems, backup batteries, multiple optics on a single rifle. The assumption is that you'll always have some kind of enhanced sight picture. But you proved that assumption wrong." "I proved that the assumption is dangerous. Technology is wonderful. It makes us more effective, but it can't be a crutch. The moment you can't function without it, you're vulnerable." Day 5 brings Fletcher's breakthrough. He's been struggling all week. The panic attack from the rooftop still haunts him. Every time he gets behind the rifle, his hands start to shake. His breathing becomes irregular. The trauma response kicks in before he can stop it. But today, something's different. Alexis has him start with dry fire. No ammunition, just practicing the motions, breath control, trigger press, sight alignment, building the muscle memory without the stress of live fire. "The rifle is just a tool," she tells him quietly. "It's not going to hurt you. The enemy sniper hurt you. The combat situation hurt you. But this rifle? It's just metal and wood and springs. It does exactly what you tell it to do." Fletcher nods. His hands are steadier today. "Now I want you to do something," Alexis continues. "I want you to remember that moment on the rooftop. The panic, the fear, the feeling of being helpless." Fletcher's face goes pale. Ma'am, I know, but you need to face it. Not push it away, not ignore it, face it. Acknowledge that it happened, that you felt what you felt, and that you survived it. She puts a hand on his shoulder. You survived, specialist. That panic attack didn't kill you. The enemy sniper didn't kill you. You're here, you're alive. And now you get to decide what happens next. Does that moment define you, or do you define yourself? Fletcher takes a long breath, holds it, releases it slowly. The breathing technique Alexis taught him. I define myself, he says. Then show me. Fletcher picks up his M110, settles into position. Through iron sights, the 300-meter target is barely visible. But he's not thinking about the target. He's thinking about his breath, his trigger press, his sight alignment. The rifle fires. The round hits center mass. Fletcher looks up at Alexis. There are tears in his eyes, but he's smiling. Again, she says. He fires again. Another center mass hit. Again. By the end of the session, Fletcher has put 15 rounds into a 12-inch circle at 300 meters using iron sights. Not perfect, but functional. Combat effective. More importantly, he's rebuilt something he thought was broken. Day 7 is evaluation day. Each soldier takes the same test. 5 rounds at 400 meters. Iron sights only. Supported prone position. No time limit. The standard is simple. 3 hits on a man-sized silhouette constitutes a pass. Mitchell goes first. 5 rounds, 5 hits. 3 of them in the chest area, the other 2 in the head. He's not just competent anymore, he's exceptional. Rutherford goes next. 5 rounds, 4 hits. He's frustrated by the miss, but Alexis reminds him that 4 out of 5 at 400 meters with iron sights is something 90% of soldiers can't do. Fletcher goes last. Everyone watches, wondering if he'll hold it together, if the pressure will trigger another panic attack. He settles into position, breathes, finds his sight picture, fires 5 rounds in steady succession. No hesitation, no shaking, just smooth, professional marksmanship. 4 hits, all center mass. When he stands up, the rest of the team is applauding. Not mocking, not patronizing, genuine respect for what they've just witnessed. A soldier who was combat ineffective a week ago just proved he's not only functional, but skilled. Blackwood approaches Alexis after the evaluation. Commander, I need to ask you something. Sir? Why did you stay? You could have taken the recall to DevGru, could have gone back to the tip of the spear, high-value targets, the kind of missions that make careers. But you stayed here to teach soldiers iron sights. Alexis considers her answer. Sir, in DevGru, I might participate in 10 or 20 missions a year. High impact, important, but limited scope. Here I taught 7 soldiers a skill that could save their lives. Those 7 soldiers will teach their squads. Their squads will teach their platoons. The knowledge spreads. In 5 years, there might be 1,000 soldiers who can make shots with iron sights because of what I taught 7 men this week. That's not just tactical impact. That's strategic impact. Blackwood nods slowly. You're thinking like a general, Commander, not just an operator. I'm thinking like someone who understands that real leadership isn't about personal glory. It's about making everyone around you better. The next morning, Alexis wakes to find an email from Blackwood in her inbox. Subject line, After Action Review, Mandatory Reading for All Infantry Officers. She opens it. Inside is a detailed analysis of the rooftop engagement, the ambush, the broken scope, the iron sight shot. But more than that, it's an analysis of what went wrong before the first round was ever fired. Blackwood's writing is honest, painfully so. I dismissed Commander Brennan's concerns about the target building because I assumed my 9 months in Mosul made me the expert. I prioritized timeline over tactical caution. I allowed my ego to override professional judgment. These mistakes nearly cost 6 soldiers their lives. They were saved only because Commander Brennan possessed skills and experience I failed to recognize or utilize properly. This is a leadership failure on my part. Moving forward, I am implementing the following changes to our unit. SOP. The email goes on to detail new procedures. Advisory personnel will have direct input on mission planning. Concerns raised by subject matter experts will be formally documented and addressed. Alternative courses of action will be developed for all missions, not just primary plans. But the last paragraph is what strikes Alexis most deeply. Commander Brennan taught our team more than marksmanship this week. She taught us humility. She taught us that competence often comes in unexpected packages. She taught us to trust fundamentals over assumptions. These are lessons I will carry for the rest of my career. I can only hope the soldiers under my command will do the same. Alexis closes the email, feels something warm in her chest. This is impact, not the adrenaline rush of a successful raid, but the quiet knowledge that she's changed how people think, how they lead, how they prepare their soldiers for the moment when everything goes wrong. Her phone buzzes. Text message from Mitchell. Ma'am, Fletcher just got his sniper school orders. Reports in 60 days. He wanted you to know. Says he's going to make you proud. Mitchell. Another text follows immediately. Also, I'm putting in for Ranger School. Figure if I'm going to be a better NCO, I should probably stop talking about what I think I know and start learning what I don't know. You taught me that. Thank you. Mitchell. Alexis responds to both messages with simple congratulations, but inside she's feeling that same warmth, that same understanding. This is what teaching is, not just transferring knowledge, but changing trajectories, opening possibilities, showing people they're capable of more than they thought. She thinks about Morrison, about how he taught her not just iron sights, but a philosophy, a way of thinking about her profession, and how that philosophy saved 6 lives on a rooftop in Mosul. She thinks about his son David, about how his death in Fallujah led to lessons that Morrison passed to her, and how those lessons are now spreading through the military, through Mitchell, through Fletcher, through 7 soldiers who will teach 70, who will teach 700. David Morrison died in 2004, 21 years ago, but his death is still saving lives. Because his father refused to let the lesson be lost, refused to let the sacrifice be meaningless. Alexis opens a new document on her laptop, starts writing. To the family of Lance Corporal David Morrison, USMC, you don't know me, but your son saved my life. She writes for an hour, telling them about Gunny Morrison, about the iron sight training, about Mosul, about how their son's sacrifice led to lessons that are changing military doctrine, about how she's teaching those lessons to the next generation. She doesn't know if the family will want to hear from her, doesn't know if opening old wounds is the right thing to do, but she feels compelled to tell them, to make sure they know that David Morrison's death meant something, continues to mean something. She finishes the letter, reads it 3 times, makes small edits, then sends it to Morrison with a note. Gunny, I wrote this for David's family. Don't know if I should send it. Your call. Morrison's response comes back 10 minutes later. Send it. His mother needs to know. Thank you, Morrison. So Alexis sends it to an address Morrison provides, a small house in North Carolina where David Morrison's parents still live, still grieve, still wonder if their son's death meant anything. Now they'll know it did. 6 months later, Alexis is back at Coronado, back in California, back to teaching SEAL candidates the fundamentals of their profession. But she's different now, changed by Mosul, changed by teaching soldiers who thought they knew everything and learning alongside them, changed by understanding that impact comes in many forms. She's in the middle of a marksmanship class when someone knocks on the door of the range, one of the admin staff. Ma'am, you have a visitor, says he's here for the Joint Training Evolution. Alexis walks to the entrance of the range. Standing there in Army ACUs is Staff Sergeant Brennan Mitchell. He grins when he sees her. Sergeant Mitchell, what are you doing at Coronado? Joint Army-Navy training, ma'am. Advanced marksmanship course. They asked for volunteers who had specialized skills to share. Figured I'd volunteer the skills you taught me. He's carrying a rifle case, sets it down, opens it. Inside is his M4. No scope, just iron sights. Thought I'd teach these SEAL candidates what a SEAL commander taught me. That technology is nice, but fundamentals are essential. Alexis smiles, really smiles. The class is going to love that, or hate it, probably both. Just like I did, ma'am. She brings him into the range, introduces him to the class of SEAL candidates, young men in their 20s, confident, capable, certain they know everything there is to know about shooting. Gentlemen, Mitchell says, let me tell you about the best shot I ever saw. Mosul, Iraq. 400 meters. Through a window. Iron sights only. Impossible shot. Except it wasn't impossible, because the shooter understood something you're about to learn. He proceeds to tell them the story, about the ambush, about the broken scope, about Alexis calculating holdover with iron sights and making a shot that saved 6 lives. The candidates are skeptical. Alexis can see it on their faces. They think Mitchell is exaggerating, embellishing, making it sound more impressive than it was. Until Mitchell looks at her. Commander Brennan is standing right there. Ask her if I'm making it up. 20 pairs of eyes turn to Alexis. She meets their gazes calmly. Staff Sergeant Mitchell's account is accurate. The scope on the M110 was cracked. I used backup iron sights, made the shot at 400 meters. It's not magic. It's not superhuman ability. It's fundamentals applied under pressure. One of the candidates raises his hand. Ma'am, that seems impossible. How did you even see the target at that distance through iron sights? Alexis walks to the rifle rack, selects an M4, removes the ACOG optic, flips up the iron sights. That's the wrong question, she says. The question isn't, how did I see it? The question is, how did I understand where the bullet needed to go, based on science and mathematics, instead of visual confirmation? She nods to Mitchell. Sergeant, want to help me demonstrate? For the next 2 hours, they run the candidates through the same drills Alexis taught in Mosul, stripping away their reliance on optics, teaching them to calculate and estimate and trust physics over technology. The candidates struggle, complain, get frustrated, exactly like Mitchell and his team did. And exactly like Mitchell and his team, they slowly start to understand. After the class, Mitchell and Alexis walk across the Coronado base. The sun is setting over the Pacific. The ocean breeze carries the salt smell that Alexis has missed during her deployments to landlocked countries. How's Fletcher doing? She asks. Good, ma'am. Really good. He went through some additional stress management training. Works with a sports psychologist now. He's become one of our most reliable shooters. Actually volunteered for sniper school. Got accepted. That's excellent. Tell him I'm proud of him. I will. And ma'am, I wanted to say thank you for everything you taught us. It wasn't just about shooting. It was about leadership and humility and understanding that credentials don't matter as much as competence. They stop at the edge of the base, look out at the ocean. You know what's funny? Mitchell continues. When you first showed up in Mosul, I thought we were babysitting you. Thought you were just some instructor who'd never seen real combat. I was so wrong, it's embarrassing. You weren't wrong, Sergeant. You just didn't have all the information. I had enough information to be respectful, to listen, to assume competence instead of incompetence. I failed that test, but you taught me better. Alexis considers this. You know what Morrison told me once? My old instructor, the Marine who taught me iron sights. He said the mark of a good soldier isn't whether they make mistakes. It's whether they learn from them. I learned, ma'am. The whole team learned. They stand there in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Mitchell speaks again. There's something else, something I wanted to show you. He pulls out his phone, opens a video, hands it to Alexis. The video shows a shooting range, Someone firing at distance with iron sights. The shooter is young, maybe 23, familiar somehow. The video pans to show the target. 400 meters, multiple hits center mass. That's Fletcher, Mitchell says. 3 months ago, his first day of sniper school, they asked him to demonstrate his skills. He asked permission to remove his scope and shoot with iron sights. The instructors thought he was crazy, until he did what you taught him. The video shows the instructor's reactions: disbelief, then respect. He told them a SEAL commander in Mosul taught him that fundamentals matter more than equipment. They asked, who? He showed them your after-action report from the rooftop engagement. Now it's part of the sniper school curriculum, teaching iron sight shooting at extended range based on your techniques. Alexis feels something warm in her chest. Pride, purpose, the understanding that impact ripples outward in ways you can't always predict. That's what teaching is, she says quietly. Passing on knowledge, creating ripple effects, touching lives you'll never meet through the students you do meet. Is that why you turned down the recall to DevGru? Alexis looks at him sharply. How did you know about that? Mitchell grins. Blackwood told me. He heard it through channels. Said Naval Special Warfare Command wanted you back for high-priority operations. Said you declined to continue teaching. I did. Can I ask why? I mean, SEAL Team 6. High-value targets, the tip of the spear, that's got to be tempting. Alexis thinks about this, about how to explain it. When I was with DevGru, every mission felt important. Because they were important. Direct action, high-value targets, immediate tactical impact. But the impact was limited to that moment, that target, that mission. She gestures toward the phone, toward Fletcher's video. This is a different kind of impact. I taught you and Fletcher and your team. You're teaching SEAL candidates. Fletcher's teaching at sniper school. Those students will teach their teams. Those teams will teach their units. The fundamentals I learned from Morrison and passed to you are spreading through the entire military. That's strategic impact. That changes the force at every level. Mitchell nods slowly. So you chose the bigger mission. I chose the mission that fits who I am right now. Maybe I'll go back to DevGru someday. Maybe not. But right now, this is where I need to be. That evening, Alexis returns to her quarters. Small apartment off base. Quiet. Simple. On her desk is a photograph. Her father in his Navy uniform, Chief Petty Officer Thomas Brennan, died when she was 16. Never got to see her graduate from the Naval Academy. Never got to see her become a SEAL. Never got to see her prove that his daughter could be 3 times as good as anyone expected. She picks up the photo, studies his face. I hope I'm making you proud, Dad, she says to the image. I'm trying to do it right, trying to be the kind of leader you would have been if you'd had more time. Her phone rings. She sets down the photo, answers. Commander Brennan. Alexis, it's Morrison. Gunny, it's late there. Everything okay? Everything's fine. I just got an interesting call from the Commandant of the Marine Corps Sniper School. Alexis sits down. Okay? They want me to come out of retirement, teach a course on fundamental marksmanship, based on the techniques I taught you, based on what you did in Mosul and what you're teaching at Coronado. Morrison's voice carries something Alexis hasn't heard before. Hope. Purpose. They said a SEAL commander made an impossible shot in Iraq that's changing how they think about sniper training. They tracked down your training records, found my name, called me, said they want the source, want to learn from the person who taught the person who's changing their curriculum. Gunny, that's incredible. It is, and it's because of you. Because you remembered what I taught you, because you proved it works, because you're passing it on. Morrison pauses. When he speaks again, his voice is thick with emotion. I spent 20 years thinking I failed my son, 20 years carrying that guilt. But maybe I didn't fail. Maybe I just hadn't found the right student yet. Maybe David's death led to lessons that are saving lives now. Through you. through what you're teaching. Alexis feels tears in her eyes. You didn't fail, Gunny. You got it right. You just needed someone ready to learn the lesson. I'm going to do it, Morrison says. Going to come out of retirement. Going to teach these Marines what I taught you. Going to make sure David's death means something. It already means something, Gunny. It saved 6 lives in Mosul. It's saving lives at sniper school. It's creating a generation of shooters who understand fundamentals over technology. They talk for another hour, making plans, discussing curriculum. 2 teachers separated by decades and branches of service, but united by the understanding that fundamental skills, properly taught, create impact that echoes across time. When Alexis finally hangs up, she checks her email, sees a new message from an address she doesn't recognize. She opens it. Dear Commander Brennan, I received your letter. I cannot adequately express what it meant to me. For 21 years, I have wondered if my son's death meant anything, if his sacrifice mattered. You have given me the answer. David's death led to lessons that saved 6 soldiers in Mosul, that are saving soldiers every day, that will save soldiers for generations to come. You have given my grief purpose. You have given my son's memory meaning. Thank you. With deepest gratitude, Margaret Morrison. Alexis reads the email 3 times, then forwards it to Morrison, to Mitchell, to Fletcher, to everyone who learned the lesson, who's passing it on. 3 months later, the ceremony at the Naval Special Warfare Center is small, intimate, just the way Alexis wanted it. Her M4A1, the rifle that everyone had rejected, sits in a glass display case near the entrance of the marksmanship training building. The case is mounted on the wall where every SEAL candidate will see it during their training, where every instructor will pass it daily. The plaque beneath it reads, M4A1, carbine used by Lieutenant Commander Alexis Brennan, USN, Mosul, Iraq. Confirmed enemy kill at 400 meters using iron sights. The weapon doesn't win the fight, the warrior does. The ceremony attendees are few. Alexis's commanding officer, a handful of fellow instructors, and 3 special guests who traveled across the country to be here. Staff Sergeant Brennan Mitchell stands in his dress uniform. He's thinner than he was in Mosul, harder. Ranger School will do that. But his eyes carry the same respect they held the day he looked up her file and discovered who she really was. Specialist Dominic Fletcher, now wearing the crossed rifle's insignia of a graduate sniper, stands beside Mitchell. He's different too, confident, steady. The young man who froze on a rooftop has been replaced by someone who knows his worth, who's proven it. And Gunnery Sergeant Frank Morrison, 73 years old now, he came out of retirement 6 weeks ago to teach at the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School. Teaching the lessons his son never learned, making sure a new generation knows that fundamentals matter more than technology. The commanding officer makes brief remarks, talks about exceptional marksmanship, about representing the highest traditions of naval special warfare, about embodying the SEAL ethos of adaptability and perseverance. Then he invites Alexis to speak. She steps to the podium, looks at the small audience, at her rifle in its case. This rifle, she says, was issued to me because someone assumed I wouldn't need anything better, that I was just an advisor, just an observer, someone who wouldn't see combat. She pauses, lets that sink in. They were wrong, but they weren't wrong to give me this rifle, because this rifle taught me something more important than any perfect weapon could have. She looks at Morrison. The old Marine is standing straight, proud, his eyes slightly wet. It taught me that Gunnery Sergeant Morrison was right, that the rifle is just a tool, that physics doesn't care about your optics, that fundamentals don't fail even when everything else does. She looks at Mitchell and Fletcher. It taught me that teaching is more important than operating, that passing on knowledge creates ripple effects that spread further than any single mission, that the best way to serve isn't always at the tip of the spear. She looks at the rifle. This rifle saved 6 lives in Mosul, but the lessons it taught have saved more, will continue saving more, because Staff Sergeant Mitchell is teaching them to his soldiers, because Specialist Fletcher is teaching them at sniper school, because Gunny Morrison is teaching them to the next generation of Marine snipers. Her voice catches slightly. My father told me I'd have to be 3 times as good to get half the credit. He was right. But what he didn't tell me, what I had to learn myself, is that being 3 times as good isn't about proving yourself to the doubters. It's about being good enough to teach others, to make them 3 times as good, to create a force multiplier that extends far beyond your own capabilities. She steps away from the podium, approaches the display case, places her hand on the glass. They gave me an outdated rifle, not knowing the Navy SEAL didn't need a scope. But I'm grateful they did, because this rifle, this rejected, worn-out, inadequate rifle, taught me the most important lesson of my career. She turns back to the audience. Equipment is temporary. Fundamentals are eternal. The warrior is the weapon. Everything else is just tools. The ceremony concludes. People disperse, but Morrison, Mitchell, and Fletcher remain. Ma'am, Fletcher says, his voice is stronger now, more confident. I wanted to tell you something. At sniper school, on my first day, the chief instructor asked why I requested to shoot without optics for my evaluation. I told him you taught me that fundamentals matter more than technology. He pulls out his phone, shows Alexis a photo. It's a target, 400 meters, multiple impacts, tight group, shot with iron sights. He said that if I could shoot like that with iron sights, I'd be the best sniper in my class with optics. He was right. I graduated #1 because you taught me to trust fundamentals. Mitchell adds his own story. At Ranger School, we had a land navigation course. My compass broke, completely unusable. My Ranger buddy wanted to quit, said we'd never find the points without it, but I remembered what you said. Equipment fails. Fundamentals don't. I navigated using the sun, the terrain, pace count. We were the only team to find all our points that day. He meets Alexis's eyes. You didn't just teach us to shoot, ma'am. You taught us to think, to adapt, to trust our training over our tools. That's the lesson I carry every day. Morrison has been quiet, listening. Now he speaks. When David died, he says slowly, I thought the lesson died with him. I thought I'd failed, that I'd taught him wrong, that I'd lost my chance to get it right. He looks at Alexis, at Mitchell, at Fletcher. But I was wrong. The lesson didn't die. It just took a different path. Through you, Alexis, through the soldiers you taught, through the soldiers they're teaching now. David's death wasn't meaningless. It led to this. To fundamentals being taught at every level, to a generation of warriors who understand that they are the weapon. He's crying now, not ashamed of it, just letting the grief and the pride and the relief flow out after 20 years of carrying it alone. Thank you, he says to Alexis, for learning the lesson, for passing it on, for making sure my son's death saved lives. Alexis hugs him, this old Marine who taught her more than marksmanship, who taught her philosophy, who taught her that the best teachers are the ones who learn from their mistakes and make sure others don't repeat them. Later that evening, back in her quarters, Alexis sits at her desk, opens her laptop. The training manual she's been writing is nearly complete. Fundamentals, when technology fails. She adds a dedication page. To Chief Petty Officer Thomas Brennan, who taught me to be 3 times as good. To Gunnery Sergeant Frank Morrison, who taught me that fundamentals are eternal. To Lance Corporal David Morrison, whose sacrifice led to lessons that save lives. And to every warrior who understands that the weapon doesn't win the fight, the warrior does. She saves the document, sends it to the Naval Special Warfare Training Command for review, and potential incorporation into the SEAL training curriculum. The next morning she wakes early, walks to the marksmanship training building before anyone else arrives, stands in front of the display case, looks at her rifle. The rifle they gave her because they didn't know better. The rifle that proved equipment doesn't matter. The rifle that taught her the most important lesson. She places her hand on the glass, whispers quietly, "Thank you." Not to the rifle, but to everyone who made this moment possible. To her father, who taught her to be 3 times as good. To Morrison, who taught her fundamentals. To David Morrison, whose death led to lessons that save lives. To Mitchell and Fletcher and Blackwood, and all the soldiers who learned and will teach others. To the unbroken chain of warriors passing knowledge forward through time. The morning sun catches the glass of the display case, makes the worn rifle inside seem to glow. This outdated, rejected, inadequate weapon that proved the only thing that matters is the person holding it. Alexis smiles, turns away, walks toward her classroom. Another group of students is waiting, young, confident, certain they know everything there is to know about shooting. She's going to teach them they're wrong, and then she's going to teach them to be right, just like Morrison taught her, just like her father taught her, just like warriors have taught each other since the first human picked up a weapon and learned that skill matters more than tools. The cycle continues. The lesson endures. The fundamentals never fail. And Lieutenant Commander Alexis Brennan walks into her classroom, ready to prove once again that the warrior is the weapon. Always has been, always will be.